Welcome to Sex Ed with DB. I'm your host, DB. Let's get into it. Don't fast forward this. I'm going to tell you all about a SMUT quiz that we made. Are you having trouble getting in the mood? That's normal. Most of us don't start turned on. We get turned on by something, and that's called responsive desire. You just need a little spark to get you going. So me and my team made the SMUT quiz. You answer 5 quick questions, and we match you with your assigned SMUT. One single high heat scene from a book picked specifically for what turns you on. Not a whole novel, no slow burn, we drop you right into the good part. Read it in under 2 minutes and let your brain and body catch up. Go take the SMUT quiz now and get your required SMUT reading. Links in the show notes or at sexedwithdb.com. Let's talk about the MVP of my nightstand, Uberlube. It's silky, long-lasting, and makes sex smoother for literally everyone involved. Solo, partnered, situationship, whatever. It reduces friction, boosts pleasure, and it's condom-friendly, scent-free, and not sticky. I love a lube that's recommended by leading doctors and gentle on sensitive skin. Want to upgrade your lube? Use code SEXEDWITHDB for 10% off at uberlube.com. Treat yourself to some Uberlube. We are constantly told to hydrate. Sleep 8 hours, journal, do yoga, take care of yourself, but almost nobody says this part out loud. Pleasure is care too. I helped lead a scientific study with more than 1,000 participants looking at daily magic wand use and how it relates to stress, emotional well-being, sleep, confidence, even how connected people felt in their relationships. What we saw was simple. Consistent pleasure can be grounding, calming, regulating. Vibrators like the magic wand are real tools for wellness. If you want to see the findings, go to magicwandstudy.com and give yourself permission to actually feel good. If you like external toys like I do, boy do I have a rec for you. Say hello to Lily3 from Lalo, the vibe that proves size isn't everything. She's great for beginners, travel ready, waterproof, and shaped to fit perfectly against your vulva for maximum contact and minimum fuss. 10 vibration settings, all body safe silicone, and totally discreet. Unlock the universe of pleasure in the palm of your hand. Grab yours at lelo.com with code SEXEDWITHDB for 15% off at checkout.
Growing up, Danielle Bezalel's mom would come home from a long day at work and tell her kids about it at dinner.
She would talk placentas over pizza, meaning she would bring home a box of pizza from our local pizzeria, and she would say, oh my goodness, this placenta and this patient wouldn't come out. It was really bloody in there.
Danielle's mom was an OBGYN, which for Danielle was fascinating, mortifying, and helpful, sometimes all at once.
I remember when I got my first period when I was 12, and I started using pads, but eventually I wanted to use tampons, and I just couldn't figure out the angle to put the tampon inside my body. I was like, My mom was on the other side of the door trying to explain how to do it. And I was like, I don't get it. I just can't do it. And my mom was like, do you want me to just come in there? And I was like, okay, fine. And it was like I remember it because I was so embarrassed that my mom was seeing my vagina. And I was like so concerned about that. But she bent down on the floor and just put it right inside me and was like, does it feel okay? And I was like, yeah, it feels okay. And that was it.
Danielle learned a lot about her vagina, vulva, and nearby organs from her mom, more than most kids.
But I don't remember any conversations around pleasure, around sexuality, around body image, around, celebrating my body and feeling beautiful.
This is The Longest Shortest Time. I'm Hillary Frank. Danielle Bezalel has dedicated her life to educating people about all of these missing pieces, especially pleasure. She actually did an experiment where she collected data on her own orgasms. More on that later. Danielle is a sex educator with a master's in public health, and she's got a wonderful podcast called Sex Ed with DB. Her approach to sex ed is bold, brazen, and so much fun. Today, she joins us to share the incident that motivated her to become a sex educator, her own struggles with birth control, and of course, that orgasm experiment. Here at The Longest Shortest Time, we have an ongoing series called The Parent's Guide to Doing It. I'll link to that in the show notes. A lot of those episodes feature sexperts giving advice on how to get in the mood when you're a busy parent. Danielle has her own thoughts on this, and if you're struggling in the bedroom, you're in for a treat because Danielle has some of my favorite advice we've featured on the show. What was sex ed in school like for you?
Sex ed in school was not good. Luckily, I did not get abstinence-only education, but that is a low bar. I don't want to act like hip hip hooray that I didn't get abstinence-only. But I mainly remember getting sex ed in 5th grade, where they separated the boys and the girls, and they taught the girls about periods and the boys, I don't know, about wet dreams, I assume, or about erections and or about body odor.
Did you learn about wet dreams too? Because we also learned about wet dreams.
I don't really remember. Maybe we did, but I wasn't really scandalized by it if we did. I really just remember the fat pads that they shared. And they were just like, you're going to have to use this diaper-like pad. And I was kind of like, what the hell are you talking about? This is absurd. So I remember that in 5th grade. And then in middle school, I remember I had a crush on my health teacher. And I thought he was cute.
What was crush-worthy about him?
He had like a big butt, which I don't know why as a 12 or 13-year-old I was like observing that. I mean, probably because it was big and I could tell, but I don't know. I just thought that he was a handsome dude. He was like a ginger, and my friends would often make fun of me because I think they knew that I had a crush on him. And yeah, I just remember feeling like, oh, like he's teaching us about like he taught us about STIs, and he showed us very scary pictures of STIs. So I remember that. But one positive association I have with that class is we were all assigned a different STI to make a trifold about.
Oh, wow.
And present on it. I have no idea. I can't remember what my STI was, but I remember my friend's assigned STI for her presentation was crabs. And she made this very, very fun trifold where there was all this black yarn that she put on the trifold to emulate pubes. Uh-huh. And she cut out all these little black pictures of spiders, like black construction paper spiders, and just put them all within the yarn. And I just remember thinking that was so funny, and that this was something that we were supposed to be getting scared out of our wits about, like, don't get STIs, your life will be over. And I just still remember that 20 years later of how funny I thought that was, and how creative, and how it didn't do the job for me of scaring me. It delighted me, actually.
As a sex educator now, how accurate do you think that depiction of crabs is?
Probably not. It's probably not as accurate. But I do think I learned that the less shame you feel about something, the more likely you are to engage with it and remember it. And so I think I really was craving that in that class.
How did you decide to become a sex educator?
Well, I think there are a few different reasons why I became a sex educator. I think that my mom being an OBGYN and being so damn good at her job and being so beloved by patients and helping people really taught me that sexual health and women's health was really paramount to be learning about, to be teaching about, to be engaging with. And so being exposed to her work growing up is definitely a part of what led me in this direction. I also had a really wild experience while teaching English in Israel the year after I graduated from college. And a little bit of backstory. My dad was born and raised in Afghanistan, and he has 7 brothers and sisters, and they're a Jewish family. We're Jewish. And in the 70s, Jewish people in Afghanistan were religiously persecuted, and they were kicked out of the country, and they fled to Israel. And that's where my Savta, my grandma, still lives, and half of my dad's siblings. And then he and 3 of his brothers ended up moving to America in the 80s. And so I still have, family in Israel. At the time, I was obviously kind of less aware of the politics and, so definitely not, I'll say I wouldn't make the same decision to go again and go teach English there, but that is a part of my story. Mm-hmm. But I do think that sharing a background of why I went there feels important to me. And so with that being said, I was in Israel from 2014 to 2015 teaching English, and my teaching cohort went on a field trip together, and we went to a very religious community for the day called the Community of the Bells in Jerusalem. And there was an Orthodox rabbi there who was walking us around the grounds and saying, here's the temple, here's our traditions, here's, what we believe in here, this is what community looks like here. And while he's telling the story, he kind of offhandedly mentions that he has 5 daughters. And when each of them reach the age of 17 or 18, they are married off by the matchmaker. And he also mentions that they don't learn about sex until their wedding night when they have it for the first time. And it's a mitzvah if they conceive. And so he goes on and on about, in my mind, what feel like human rights violations. Mm-hmm. And for him, this is just part of life and part of his culture and traditions. And not only did all of this happen, but these young women don't even have access to the internet. They don't have access to modern books. And I was 21 at the time, and I raised my hand in a room full of 50, 75 people and kind of challenged what he had said so nonchalantly. I said, what if this is not what they want? What if they are not ready to be mothers? What if, I asked him all of these questions, and he immediately just brushes me off with his hand physically and metaphorically and says, that's just how it goes here. Next question. Moving on. And
wow.
Yeah.
What were you feeling in your body when he said that to you?
What would you feel? I felt anger. I felt frustration, confusion, sadness, fire. I felt fire. It just felt like I was on fire.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It was then that night that I went and researched public health programs. I felt alive. And I think it's because of how before that, I don't know if I exactly knew what I wanted to do with my life. I think that I knew that I love to sing and perform and work with kids and teach and educate. And I knew that I had all of these passions, but I just didn't really see a clear path for myself. I think other friends of mine knew that they wanted to be lawyers, and they knew they wanted to be in politics, and they wanted to be doctors, and they wanted to be teachers, and all of these professions that had a very clear path. And so I just didn't really see that for myself. And so I think this day felt like a before and after, because I started to have a path towards what my purpose is.
Danielle went to New York and got her master's in public health from Columbia. And after doing a little classroom work and developing adult sex ed videos for tech organizations, she started doing her podcast, Sex Ed with DB, full-time, educating listeners about things like sexuality, period management, sex workers, queer sexual health, and birth control. When we return, Danielle shares some of her personal struggles with birth control. So I understand you've been on a birth control journey. Where does that story begin?
Yes. So I definitely have been on a birth control journey. I, from the ages of 16 to 26, tried 11 different kinds of birth control.
Wow.
And there aren't 11 different individual kinds of birth control out there, but I tried 8 different kinds of birth control pills, the Depo-Provera shot, the Mirena IUD, and the NuvaRing, not all at the same time, but in various chapters of my life, starting at age 16 all the way through age 26.
So can you walk through what the issues were, why you had to keep trying so many different methods?
Yeah, I would have loved to have just tried one method, like a lot of my friends, and it have just worked for me, but that just wasn't my experience. Essentially, each one had a different side effect for me. So when I was 16, I first got on the birth control pill. At multiple times in my journey, I did try all 3 different kinds of oral contraceptive pills. I tried the combined estrogen progesterone pill, the progesterone only, and continuous pills. And various side effects on all those different pills either led to really horrific headaches that were so painful that I ended up having to get an MRI to be like, is something wrong with my brain? Like my head is hurting so badly. And then once I got off the pill, it stopped. So it was very clear that it was related to the pill. Crippling anxiety, to the point where I was, spinning and having OCD tendencies, and it just feeling like it was just not good for me mentally. Also on the pill, I experienced very painful sex because one potential side effect is drying of the skin, and that led to drying of my vagina. And so that decreased natural lubrication that my body would have created.
Did it help to use lube or no?
I tried to use so much lube during that time. It didn't make a dent.
Wow. That sounds really hard.
Yeah. And then in college, I tried the Mirena IUD because I wanted something a little bit more permanent when I went abroad to Italy. And then when I came back from being abroad, after a few months, 5 months of the IUD being inside me, I then ended up having horrific acne, like cystic acne that I had to go on Accutane to fix,
Wow.
which is like the most intense acne medication.
And the Mirena is a hormonal IUD?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
And so I tried the Mirena. I also, like I said, tried the Depo-Provera shot at some point in there. Also felt incredibly anxious after that. And then the final method out of 11 that I tried was the NuvaRing. And for the NuvaRing, I felt so uncomfortable every day that I would use it because it would create so much vaginal discharge for me that it felt like I was peeing my pants all the time.
Wow.
So I constantly was having to change my underwear. Like it just did not feel comfortable. So yeah, that was my experience.
Did you ever try the copper IUD?
I intentionally did not try the copper IUD because I am someone who, without birth control, has incredibly heavy periods. So one potential side effect of the copper IUD is that it can make your period worse and your cramps worse. And to me, the Mirena IUD insertion was so painful, and the side effects of, cystic acne were so frustrating to me that I had a lot of fear around getting the copper IUD inserted because of the pain and because of the really terrible cramps and because of the even heavier periods. And when I'm talking heavy periods now, I'm saying I use the largest ultra tampon, and then I also wear period underwear to catch any extra blood.
Wow.
So it's really important for me to take care of my body in the best way that I know how. And I have not been on hormonal birth control since I was 27.
What method have you found that has worked for you?
Yeah, I think condoms are really great. especially if you're someone who's having sex with someone with a penis. It feels like a very easy, inexpensive way to prevent pregnancy. And you can use condoms with silicone-based lube, with water-based lube. You can put lube in the condom. So they're a fantastic method, and I highly recommend it. And as a sex educator, it is critical for me to share education and information and how safe birth control is and the fact that it does work for most people. So I think the biggest challenge for me, other than, of course, the really terrible side effects, is really mitigating this duality of me having this really terrible experience. And of course, knowing people listening right now have also had really similar experiences. And also feeling like I need to make a disclaimer every time that I am pro birth control and birth control is safe and effective. There's a massive body of scientific research that shows that when women in the US have access to birth control and use birth control as instructed, their social and economic opportunities increase. They can have positive side effects, such as less painful periods and reduced risk of uterine cancer. And also, of course, birth control controls births and decreases the amount of unintended pregnancies. And it's really just paramount for me to share that more access equals more autonomy for women and people with vulvas to make the best decisions for them, full stop.
So what is it like for you to have these really ingrained beliefs about birth control and how important and empowering it is, and for you to not be able to use almost any of them other than condoms?
It definitely sucks. I'm not going to lie. It sucks, but it makes me that much more passionate about being able to teach the facts and the science to as many people as I can, because there are many others who have had bad experiences who want policies to change because of them. And that's not what the science says. That's not what the research says. For a majority of people, birth control works as intended and does not have these horrible side effects. So it actually invigorates me to share my story and also make sure that people know the education they need.
Lately, there have been a lot of influencers on social media saying that hormonal birth control is harmful, advocating for cycle tracking. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's very dangerous to have people on the internet who don't have expertise and science-backed information to be peddling misinformation and disinformation to a very vulnerable population, often young people. So I think that's number one. Number two, I do think that if I would separate out the question that you had and specifically talk about cycle tracking, I do think we should teach people when they potentially are ovulating in their cycle, how long a typical cycle is, what, certain feelings may arise when you're about to get your period, how to identify that. I do think that we should be teaching people more about their bodies, because I think that there would be a lot less misunderstanding around pregnancy, around what people should be looking for, around their period, if we do as much as we can to educate them.
For people who are struggling with finding a birth control method that is working for them, say they're having side effects from something, is there an order of different methods and devices that you recommend starting with and working your way through?
That's a great question. I think it's really dependent on the person and for them to talk about their history and their experience with their cycle and what they're really aiming to do with their provider. Because something that I did really learn from my mom when she counsels her patients, and I learned this in public health school too, you have to ask the person, what are your goals and what is realistic for you? So if you are someone who can commit to taking something at the same time every day and wants to try a low dose estrogen pill, for example, that might be a good method for you. If you're not wanting to get your period, anymore, and you are convinced that you're not able to do something every day or every week or every 3 months, maybe the IUD is a good option for you. So I think it's important to take inventory of what are your goals, what are your capabilities, what's realistic for you. Is your body sensitive? How heavy is your period, right? Like, think about all of these things. And there's an amazing Planned Parenthood quiz online that actually can help you find which birth control method might be best for you. The reality is, until you try it, you don't know how it's going to impact your body. If you're someone who is like me, who has tried multiple methods and nothing has felt great to you, and you do have a cis male partner who doesn't want to use condoms, I think that conversation needs to be had as to why do they not want to use condoms, and why is their potential comfort level more important than your horrific side effects that you might be feeling.
Coming up, Danielle's orgasm experiment. You talk a lot about orgasms on your podcast, about how to improve them, how to have them if you're not. You also specifically have talked about your own orgasms. You did an experiment for your podcast using the Magic Wand Vibrator. I just want to acknowledge that the Magic Wand sponsors your podcast.
Yes.
But can you talk about what that experiment was and why you did it?
Yeah. So when I was 24, I was gifted a Magic Wand Vibrator. And prior to that, I had used 1 or 2 different kinds of vibrators, and I thought they were cool and thought that they gave me pleasure, but didn't really see them as essential to me feeling pleasure. And that fully changed when I tried the Magic Wand Original. I realized how easy it was for me to reach orgasm, how fun it was for me, how much pleasure I was getting, how intense my orgasms were, how masturbation just changed for me forever after I discovered that toy and was gifted it. So because I was so in love with this toy for years and years, and I had started my podcast, I ended up reaching out to the Magic Wand brand and said, I would love to work with you. Like, I absolutely love your product. I'm looking for sponsors for my podcast. And I ended up striking like a paid partnership deal with them. And so I had worked with them for about a year. And then I had this idea to pitch an experiment, a single subject longitudinal study, AKA my own masturbation experiment. And I pitched to them, I said, what if I did a 3-week study where the first week was abstinence week, 0 sexual activity whatsoever. The second week was I used the Magic Wand every day during that week. And the third week was sex as usual week. Sex with or without the wand or other toys, sex with or without my partner as usual. And I answered a research question that was, how does daily Magic Wand use impact my overall health and wellness when comparing that to no sexual activity and regular sexual activity? And so that was my research question. During those 3 weeks, I tracked 27 variables, including sleep, productivity, mood, relationship connectivity, stress, pain, orgasm experience, and much, much more. And I tracked those variables over time and saw a lot of really interesting results about the way in which daily pleasure impacted my life.
What did you find?
I'm so glad you asked. I essentially found that during week 2, which we called treatment week of using the Magic Wand every day, all of my quality of life measures improved. I felt more confident. I felt more connection to my partner. I felt happier. I had less stress. I had more horniness, despite me thinking that me kind of making myself, for the reasons of the experiment, masturbate every day, I thought that would make me less horny. But actually, my graph showed that I got hornier over time. My desire increased.
But is it surprising that you would feel happier and healthier if you were having great orgasms every day?
I think that I wasn't sure how impactful it would be. I thought that maybe I would feel slightly happier, right? But the numbers for me showed, I think it was my confidence improved 19% from abstinence week to magic wand week. So I think the surprise for me was getting really granular on those data and figuring out how it actually impacted not only my sexual health, but my overall health. And I think the main takeaway for me was that there are multiple pieces to me being a happy person. And if my work stress is down and my connection with my partner and my friends is up, and I am exercising and eating well, and I'm having a great sexual experience, like those 4 quadrants, if those are all in check, then I am a happy, healthy person. And so I think that how big of an impact it had and how big of a piece of that pie it took up was the surprise for me.
So this is not necessarily a magic wand specific thing, right? This is like, to me, it sounds like if you can feel in control of how you are achieving sexual satisfaction, within a week, that can really have a positive impact on your overall health. Yeah, I do think that. I do also think that sex toys in general are underutilized, especially for older generations of women and people with vulvas. I think that it's not as commonly talked about for folks above 50 to get a sex toy and every few years upgrade or get multiple sex toys. And so I do think that folks' sex toy of choice should be used more often probably than you're using it. Mm-hmm. Right. And I'm glad you mentioned the other factors too, because exercise and there are so many different factors that impact our overall and mental health. But this is an important one. Yeah, I also want to mention that the follow-up to my study is that this year we ended up doing a 1,000 person study that was IRB approved, science backed, and it included folks with vulvas 18 plus in the US and Canada. And their results were very close to mine in that Magic Wand Week, during that time, all quality of life measures improved. And so I think that having done this experiment with 1,000 strangers being the participants, and it was randomly selected participants, 200 people in each age cohort. We had a largely queer sample. We had 40% BIPOC folks. 75% were partnered. So it was really interesting to do this study with 1,000 people and see what the impacts of their sexual health were. Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit. I asked listeners to send me questions to ask you. Yeah. And the majority of them were about the same thing. They were about keeping the spark alive after having kids. Oh, wow. Great question. I'm really glad that folks who have kids are being curious about this, because while I'm not a parent myself, my understanding is that it can be a real challenge when you are underslept and when you're maybe getting in more fights with your partner and you have a person who's depending on you and you can't make time for yourself, right? Like, these are very real issues. So I want to really share that you're not alone, and this is a very common experience. When it comes to getting in the mood, something that I really recommend to folks is to figure out their go-to
turn on passage, whether it's an audio erotica that like always does it for you, or whether it's a smutty passage in a book that's a few pages, or it's a video that's 2 minutes long. So finding your go-to passage to ignite that spark for you is going to be critical, because without that, most women have responsive desire, meaning they are not just going to think of sex and want to have sex and immediately that happen for them. They need something in order to feel like their body can catch up to their mind. And so having that go-to spark and making it short, under a few minutes, can really, really help you feel like you're in the mood.
Every sex educator has their arsenal advice and their own personal style for how they give that advice. What is a piece of sex advice that you think is unique to you?
I'm sure other people say this, but this is something that I really believe in and something that I hold near and dear to my heart, which is that pleasure is a human right. And I think that having had so many experiences in my life where my pleasure with a partner was not prioritized, and knowing how many women in particular are out there listening who have felt the same thing, I want them to know that their pleasure is theirs, their pleasure is sacred, and their pleasure is a human right.
That's beautiful. We've got links to the Magic Wand study, the Planned Parenthood birth control quiz Danielle mentioned earlier, and a quiz Danielle made to help you find a smutty passage that'll help you get in the mood. You can find them in the show notes and at our website, longestshortesttime.com. This episode was produced by me, Hillary Frank, with support from Elizabeth Nakano. Our technical director is Michael Raphael. Music composed by Allison Leighton Brown and performed by hotmoms.gov. Follow The Longest Shortest Time on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you're listening right now. It is this simple click of a button for you, and it helps us so much. While you're there, why not rate us and leave a quick review? This helps more people to find the show and helps us rise in the charts. And if you want to suggest story ideas to us, be a part of our community, and generally support our work, join us at LST+. It's easy. Just go to longestshortesttime.com/club.